Hello chess friends, and welcome to Jozarov's chess channel, and welcome to my Basics in Chess series. So in this series we follow opening principles, middle game strategies and the endgame strategies. Today we'll talk about some endgames again. Today we'll talk about this principle of two weaknesses. So what does it mean? Basically, the good thing about this principle is that you can apply it also in your middle game. So when you realize it, it means that when your opponent has maybe one weakness, you should play on that weakness, and you have maybe an advantage, but maybe you still have to battle for a win. But when your opponent has maybe two weaknesses and yourself you have none, that means that you will probably win the game. So in order to win the game, you have to create two weaknesses in your opponent's position. But first of all, you should be familiar with this term weaknesses. What can be a weakness in an endgame or in the middle game or even in the opening? So a weakness can be a weak pawn or a weak square. So these are the main weaknesses in your opponent's position. We can have other weaknesses. We can have maybe an undeveloped piece and an undeveloped knight, or maybe, I don't know, an unsecured king. These are the heavy weaknesses, but these are the main weaknesses, as I said, the weak pawn and the weak squares. So how to play against the weak pawn? Of course, we want to attack it, we want to grab the pawn, we want to go into a favorable endgame with maybe one pawn up or similar ideas. But when we have a weak square in our opponent's position, we want to occupy that square. So it means we want to really place a piece on that particular square and grab the square and really moving a little bit slightly forward in our position and try to get a better activity with our own pieces, but also restrict our opponent's pieces. So these are really the most important principles. So when you create these two weaknesses in your position, it means that you stretch your opponent's defense. So your opponent will go maybe with a knight on a back rank. He will go and try to defend this weakness. His pieces will get passive and you will have active pieces. Then it's maybe possible to create some tactical shots, to maybe some really great tactical possibilities, and win the game very easily. So let's see now a couple of examples of these two weaknesses. The first game that I wanted to show you, it was played by the legendary Bobby Fischer against Joaquim Manuel Durao. And here I wanted to pause the video and try to find, first of all, the weaknesses in your opponent's position. So here, white to play, try to find, first of all, these weaknesses in black's position. Okay, I hope you realize these weaknesses. Of course, we have the weak pawn. Here it's the pawn on b6. This is the main weakness. As I said, the weaknesses can be a weak pawn or a weak square. So we have here the b6 weakness, but also we have a weak square here on d6. So how to attack these two weaknesses? Of course, we have now first to move knight on c4. It's really an instructive endgame that Bobby Fischer has played here. It was really a great game, I think. Here you see, now we have this move. This is what I mean, this passive move. Now I just want you to compare these two activities of these two knights. Of course, this knight on c4 is much better than this knight on c8, so that's why white has a decisive advantage, and you should probably here win the game. Here Bobby Fischer played, of course, bishop on g5, because of course we want to occupy the d file. We want to maybe force our opponent to go with the rook here on e8 or f8, but here black decided to stay on the d file and try to defend here with knight on e7. But this is now just getting into a pin, and here Bobby Fischer, as said, he continued to play on the weaknesses. As I said, now the idea is, of course, to play knight on e4 and cement one piece on this particular square d6. So I said these are these two main weaknesses. So you see how Bobby Fischer simply plays on that. Nothing special. I think we can understand everything that Bobby Fischer will play here in the continuation of the game. Here h6 was played, and now bishop takes on e7, rook takes on e7, and now very important move, rook on a3. Again, a move which will play against this b6 weakness. Here rook on c7, and now you see it seems simple here, rook on b3, attacking this b6 pawn. Again, black is forced to have a defensive piece. Now that's what I mean, to stretch the defense. Here you see, because rook on c6 is a forced move, now we don't have any more good coordination between the pieces. Now these rooks are not connected, and they will never be connected again, because this b6 weakness is too much to handle here for black. So knight on e4, as said, we want to cement a piece here on d6, bishop on f8, preventing these ideas, and here king on e2, because you see all of black's pieces are now used just in order to defend this d6 weakness, b6 weakness. So all of these pieces are defensive. It allows us even to play very actively with our own king. So bishop on e7, here f4, simply improving the position, not rushing into anything. King on f8, and here g4, just continue to attack. King on e8, and here rook on f1. We have rook on d5, rook on f3, rook on d8, and now rook on h3. You see, again, Bobby Fischer is playing now on another weakness. That's why bishop on f8 had to be played, simply playing against this weakness. Now the bishop is really only used in order to defend this d6 square, and also this this h6 pawn. So I want you also to pause the video and try to find here the best move. It's really a great tactical shot. I'm not saying that we all can play like Bobby Fischer. Of course, this next move is hard to see, but from a tactical point of view, here a great move, of course, knight on a5, because if you take b takes a5, then we have knight on f6, you have to move the king, and also we have then after that rook on b7 possibilities, and it will be even checkmate. So unbelievable stuff. You see, you cannot do that. After knight takes on f5, rook on c7 was played. Here knight on c4, again we have gained the pawn. We can now continue. Again, we're playing on the same weakness. Again, we're playing against this b6. That's why here rook on a7 was played, trying sort of a counter attack, at least grab this a4 pawn. And here knight on b6, knight takes, rook takes, and now rook on a8. We want, of course, to take, and also not allow maybe white to infiltrate with the rook. But here knight on f6, very powerful. Here rook on king on d8, and now rook on c6, again playing against another weakness. Now the weakness here is this pawn on c5. Here rook on c7 was played, rook on d3, king on c8, rook takes on c7, king takes on c7, and now you see rook on d7. We can grab another pawn, and I don't want to show you the whole game. I'll send you all of the PGNs in the description below, so you can analyze these games for yourself. You see, after this move, rook takes on f7, the evaluation is completely winning here for white. And here you see also this weak pawn structure. This we have now 4 weak pawns, so it's game over here for black. So let's see now another game. It was a game played by Manuel against Jozarov Capablanca. Jozarov Capablanca here with the black pieces, and here wanted to point you out how the legendary Jozarov Capablanca created another weakness. So first of all, let's again pause the video and try to find first of all the weaknesses in white's position. So of course it's the pawn here on d4, because this pawn is isolated, an isolated pawn. Sometimes it's not a weakness, but basically it is. Here the d4 pawn is really an object of our attack. So you see many of these pieces have to defend this pawn on d4. Again, I point you out that this activity maybe of this queen is much better than this queen, because the queen is only used as a defensive piece. Also the same idea with this knight. This knight is also only a protector of this d4. In the next move, of course, we'll try this move knight on f5, and let's see how Jozarov Capablanca applied this principle of 2 weaknesses, how he created another weakness in white's position. So you see the material is equal, but from a strategical point of view, I think black has the decisive advantage, because black doesn't have weaknesses. We have now a firm pawn structure here. Meanwhile, you see this d4 weakness is too much to handle here for white. So knight on f5, simply attacking the weakness. As I said, b3, we have h5, because we want to stay with our knight. g4 was the threat, of course, maybe to kick away this knight from this active square on f5. Here we have h3, and here, of course, h4. So we want to stay with the knight as said, and try to create constant pressure against this d4 pawn. So queen on d3, you see rook on c6, improving the position of the rook, king on f1, and now g6, fixing really this knight. So we have now solved all of our problems here on the king side, and we can now play freely. I wanted to pause the video and try maybe to think about for 4 or 5 minutes about this position, how to create another weakness, how to create a weak pawn or a weak square in this position. So I want to really to think about it, because I think it's really instructive, because these positions are happening very often to us, and sometimes we don't know what to do, how to win this game, because we feel that we are better here. But how to win, it's another subject, of course. It's not so easy to do that in real chess. So here, of course, after queen on b1, we have now queen on b4. This is now the idea, first of all, to create a blockade against these pawns. It means we are trying now to play the move a4, a5, a4, maybe after queen takes on a4, to create another weakness, and this will be the pawn on a2. So great endgame skills here by Jozarov Capablanca. Here king on g1 was played, and now you see the move a5. Here queen on g2, and now of course a4. We have queen on d2, we have queen takes on d2, rook takes on d2, and now a takes b3, a takes b3, and now we have this position that we wanted. We have now this two weaknesses position. So now, of course, we want to play against this other weakness. Now we have the weak pawn on d4. We have now the weak pawn on b3, and this is now a position that you should probably win in the continuation. So let's see how Jozarov Capablanca continued here. Lasker played rook on d3, rook on a6. We have g4, h takes g3, f takes g3, and now rook on c2, attacking the knight. We have knight on c3, knight on c, rook on c2, knight on d1. I'm just going to make this next move very fast, because I'm not going to show you all of these possible tactical motifs. I just wanted to show you how Capablanca played against these two weaknesses, and as I said, I'm gonna show you all of these games in the PGNS of these games in the description below, so you can check it out for yourself. So knight on e3, rook on c1, king on f2. We have knight on c6, again playing against this pawn, but now we want to of course also create a blockade against this pawn, because this pawn can be maybe used in order to maybe create some dangerous threats of promotion. So that's why knight on d1 was played, and here rook on b1. Of course, now this pawn is basically useless, because you'll never be able to advance this pawn. King on e2, we have rook on b3, and you see great tactical shot. Now Capablanca used this moment, because if you take, then of course we have to fork on d4. Here rook on king on e3 was played, rook on b4, again simply playing on this weakness. Knight on f5, again you see after king on f2, again we have now two other weaknesses. It's the pawn on g3 and also this pawn on d4. G5, we have g4, now knight on d6, and again you see Capablanca is finding now new weaknesses, because now we have a weak square on e4. Now we have a weak pawn and a weak square on e4. So again we have two weaknesses, and this should be probably a winning position here for white. So for black, pardon me. Knight on g1, knight on e4. You see Capablanca uses this moment immediately. He places the knight on this very active square. We have king on f1, rook on b1 with the check, king on g2, rook on b2. Now king on f1 again, and now very important move, rook on f2. Now this king has to move here on e2 and e1, and now this king is also out of game. Now we can play simply rook on a2, king on f1, and now king on g7. We are improving the position of the king. If maybe knight on f3 happens, of course we'll play the move f6, preventing this knight to jump on this very active square on e5, because white has lost a pawn. He cannot compete against this knight anymore on e4. Rook on e3 was played, now king on g6, rook on d3, and now f6. We have now firm pawn structure, which is very good, of course restricting this knight's ability to play. Here rook on e3, king on f7, rook on d3, and now king on e7. You see now we can play very actively with our king. Again rook on f2, king on e1, rook on g2, we have king on f1 again, and again the same idea, rook on e3, and now e5. Very important move. Now we want to create this passed pawn situation, because it's now the king is very well centralized. This king is out of game. This knight's activity is also not good. Here rook on d3 was played, and now e takes d4, rook takes on d4, but now king on c5 comes with a decisive tempo. Rook has to move d4, we have rook on c1, and now king on d5, and in this position white even resigned, because there's no way you're gonna stop this pawn. And we have also some other possibilities with knight on knight on g3 and some fork ideas. So many possibilities in this position. Also white resigned. This knight is out of game. You cannot play, of course, knight on f3, because then you get rook on f2, and in this position the legendary Manuel resigned. So let's see now another example. It's a gameplay by Marktime against Wolfgang Ullmann. Here Marktime with the white pieces. And again, I wanted to pause the video and try first of all to see what are the weaknesses in black's position. And I hope you realize that first of all we have the weakness. This is the weak e6 pawn, because it's the main weakness in black's position. This bishop is basically used as the defender of this e6, so that's why we should make progress and try to create another weakness in black's position. Here Marktime played a very nice move, bishop on a6, rook on e8, bishop on b7. You see the knight has to move now, knight on d8, rook on c7. Very nice, getting now this rook on a very active rank. We have now occupied the 7th rank, which is very important in endgames if you have the opportunity to place the rook on the 7th rank or on the 2nd rank. From black's perspective, this is now decisive winning material here. So rook on f7, we have bishop on a6 again, bishop on a4, and now simply doubling up the rooks. We have bishop on f8, rook on c4, rook takes on c7, rook takes on c7, and now knight on c6, bishop on c4. And you see now we have now created this position. We have now two weaknesses, because now this knight is only used in order to defend this a7 pawn, and also we have now the weakness, this pawn on e6. And here bishop on g7 was played, and here rook on c8, very powerful move, which creates decisive advantage here if you take, which black did here. We have bishop takes on e6, king on f8, and here bishop takes on c8 was played. And here white is of course better. We are pawn up, we have the centralized pawns here, and I'm not going to show you, as I mentioned, the whole game. I just wanted to point you out how white made progress and created these two weaknesses with some active play with the pieces, and won the game eventually with this pawn up. Of course, it's completely winning here for white. So let's see now another example. We have a game played by Ulf Andersson against Karl Robach. Again, try first of all to see what are the weaknesses in black's position. And I hope you realize that we have now this b6 weakness. This is a weak pawn, although it's protected with two pieces, but it also means that these pieces are a little bit overloaded in order to defend this pawn. So that's why our next move is of course rook on c6, because we have the advantage, of course, on the c file. We have gained a very nice activity on the c file. We have to occupy now spaces here, and that's why rook on c6 perfect. Rook takes on c6, and you see now this knight is a little bit overloaded. It has to defend this pawn on b6, but the position doesn't improve if you just move with the pawn on b5, because then this rook will attack this a6 pawn, and then this rook is too overloaded in order to defend this a6 pawn. So that's why with b5 you haven't really improved the position, because this rook's activity is huge, and that's why white is simply winning here. So king on f7 was played. You see knight on d2, simply improving the position of the knight, as said, because we have occupied the 6th rank. This king cannot play very actively. It cannot go here, maybe here on the square d7 and attack it, so that's why here king on e7 and now knight on e4. We have now created this position, very important position. We have now again created two weaknesses, b6 weakness and now this f6 weakness, because the rook and the knight are attacking this f6 and this rook is attacking this pawn on b6. You see, this knight is basically useless. It's only used as a defensive piece in order to defend here. So that's why rook on b7, you see Black is trying here first to defend this b6 and maybe try to advance this this f5 because he wants to undermine his pressure here. b4 was played, and now we have rook on b8, we have knight on c3, again with the same idea. We want now get a better square for a knight. Of course, it's a square d5. We have f5, knight on d5 first with a check, king on f7 was played. We have king on g3, improving the position of the king. Here h5, g takes f5, g takes f5, rook on d6, attacking the knight. You have to defend again. Again, very important move, because now the rook is also used to defend the knight. So we have now again two weaknesses, the b6 weakness and now this overload of this knight. Here king on h4, king on g7 and now king on h5, and in this position you see Black resign, because we have now again a new weakness on h5, and this was decisive winning material here for White. Okay, I hope you realize these ideas. As I said, the main weaknesses in your opponent's position can be a weak square or a weak pawn. When you have realized your opponent's weakness, stay on that weakness, try improve the position of your pieces, try to maybe overload your opponent's pieces, and then try to get another weakness. If you have two weaknesses in your opponent's position and you have none, you'll probably win the game. Okay, I hope you realize these ideas, and I hope also that you enjoyed this video. Meanwhile, you can watch my other basics in chess videos with some other opening principles, middle game strategies and the endgame strategies, and you can also watch my chess tactics and chess puzzles videos, in which I show you all of the possible tactical motifs that can happen in a chess game, with some checkmate patterns. And you can also subscribe to my channel if you like this content. Thanks you for watching, guys, and chess is the best, of course.